Amber's review left us so happy. Check it out. She writes to say that 240 gave her the practice test, material, and confidence she needed to pass. This review has me excited to help other teachers and soon-to-be teachers like you pass their exams and get in the classroom. My name is Terry, and I, along with the 240 team, am here to help you pass your certification exams. This video is going to prepare you for the Developmental Knowledge portion of the FTCE PreK-3. This is a test for anyone who wants to teach pre-kindergarten through 3rd grade in the state of Florida. And this video is going to cover 3 things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the most important concepts to master, and we're going to look at a few practice questions. The FTCE PreK-3 exam is split into 4 subtests: Developmental Knowledge, Language Arts and Reading, Mathematics, and Science. Each contains a certain amount of selected response questions. But for now, we're going to focus on Developmental Knowledge, which has 55 questions in all. I'm ready to take this test down. Who's with me? Now, the FTCE PreK-3 Developmental Knowledge subtest consists of 7 competencies. You'll need to have knowledge of child growth, child development and relationships with the family and community, the profession and foundations of early childhood education, developmentally appropriate practices, developmentally appropriate curricula, developmentally appropriate intervention strategies and resources, diagnosis, assessment and evaluation, and child guidance and classroom behavioral management. Each competency is worth between 12 and 20% of your exam. We'll discuss one key concept for each competency. These are your must-knows. Let's start with our foundational competencies and take it from the top with number 1. Competency 1 is knowledge of child growth, child development, and the relationships with the families and the community. You'll need to know the theories and stages of typical child development, how outside factors impact it, and how to involve families in the child's learning. The big concept we're going to go over is learning theories. Learning theories explain how children learn and incorporate experiences to expand their own knowledge. There are 3 main theories you need to be familiar with. The first is behaviorism. In this theory, learners are viewed as passive participants who change their behavior in response to stimuli in their environment. A related term you may have heard is classical conditioning. The second theory to know is cognitivism. This view is that learning is connecting new information to existing information through mental processes. This is what we're talking about when you activate a student's schema. Last is constructivism, which states that learning is knowledge built through experience. Think problem-based or inquiry lessons. Now that's just one slice of the pie that is child development. Let's move on to how we put all of our knowledge into action in the classroom. Competency 2 is knowledge of the profession and foundations of early childhood education. It's all about the implications of theories of child development for classroom instruction. That includes everything from professional standards and responsibilities to state and federal laws. Let's focus on those implications. Knowing what we know about child development and learning theories, how should we design our curriculum and instruction? There are several approaches, but one I want to highlight is the Reggio Emilia approach. It was developed by Loris Malaguzzi and is named for the area in Italy in which it began. It is a constructivist approach that focuses on self-guided learning through exploration. The approach is known for the concept of the 100 languages of children, meaning that children are natural communicators and self-expression should be strongly encouraged. Here's what it looks like in the classroom. Students work together with teachers and parents. Teachers allow children's interests to guide their projects. Classrooms aren't isolated. They're integrated with other classes, the community, and natural materials. And teachers document students' learning through transcription, photos, and video. Now hold on. That sounds like a class I'd like to be in. But of course, that's not the only approach. You'll also need to know about Montessori, Froebel, and more. Luckily, we explain them all in the 240 study guide. Let's keep rolling to competency 3. The third competency on the developmental knowledge subtest is developmentally appropriate practices. This one covers how to organize your classroom, design learning objectives, and build relationships with students, all in a way that's best for the kids in the pre-K through 3rd grade age group. the critical, very serious, important topic we're going to explain is play. Yeah, it's playtime. For real though, play is serious business. Not only is play important for the brain development, but both free play and guided play provide opportunities for students to reinforce their learning and develop problem-solving skills. As with all areas of development, there are stages of play that children typically go through. Let's briefly go through them in order. First is the unoccupied stage. Taking place in infancy, this is when babies just observe people and things. Then, between infancy and age 2, children move into the solitary play stage. Here, they begin to play alone and don't really interact with peers. Once they start observing other kids but still aren't playing with them, they're in the onlooker stage. Next comes the parallel play stage. Children, usually between 2.5 and 3 years old, begin to play alongside other kids but not in cooperation with them. Then comes the associate play stage, when children play in cooperation with other children in a loosely organized manner. This often happens between the ages of 3 and 4 years old. And finally, when kids reach the cooperative stage, they play with other children in a more organized way and can share ideas about the activity. Kids are working on this last stage at ages 4 and up. That means your students are likely still going to be working on cooperating with others during play activities. You know, if I had a nickel for every time an early childhood teacher has to say, "Sharing is caring," I'd have a lot of nickels. I know that's a lot of stages to remember, and that's only one topic out of many from this competency. So be sure to stick around to the end of the video because I have a practice question about those stages. It's got your name on it. All right, playtime's over. Let's move on to the fourth competency. In competency 4, developmentally appropriate curricula, you'll need to know the best strategies for teaching reading, mathematics, listening skills, the arts, nutrition, pretty much everything. Let's zoom in on a developmentally appropriate strategy for teaching reading. Teaching children to read is a complex process. You could watch hours and hours of video on it, but an important piece to know for your exam is decoding. Decoding is when students use their phonics skills to sound words out. This means that teachers should help students apply what they know about letter-sound correspondence to break down words while reading. For example, if a student comes across the unknown word jump while reading, the teacher can help them sound it out by prompting them to make the sounds of the letters j, p, and then blend them all together. You can also help students practice this skill by having them sound out words when writing or build words using magnetic letters or letter cards. Now, as for the strategies for teaching all those other subjects you need to know, get the 240 study guide so you can guarantee you're prepared. We're more than halfway there. Let's keep going. The fifth competency, developmentally appropriate intervention strategies and resources, is all about supporting students with diverse needs and exceptionalities. Whether you're teaching students with disabilities, those learning English, children with health impairments, or students at risk of school failure, you'll likely be collaborating with other teachers and professionals in your school. So, let's talk about how to work in a collaborative or cooperative teaching model. Some examples of other staff members you'll be collaborating with are special ed teachers, counselors, instructional coaches, and ESL teachers. Here are a few best practices for teaching with another staff member. Collaboration between teachers should be based on a clear goal. Define what you're trying to accomplish, and the goal should be student-centered. Define how the goal will benefit students. Work with your collaborating partner to track progress. Define how you will measure success. Keep ongoing collaborations focused on that, and of course, strive to maintain a positive professional relationship when collaborating with colleagues. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot more that goes into this competency. I didn't even get into the strategies for working with children with various needs and exceptionalities. For detailed information on how to meet the needs of all your students, check out the 240 study guide. It'll prepare you for all the topics you'll see on the FTCE PreK-3 exam. Let's keep developing this developmental knowledge video. On to competency 6. The sixth competency is diagnosis, assessment, and evaluation. This one covers different types of screenings and assessments and how to use them to measure student progress and plan instruction. Let's talk about what makes an assessment fair. Assessments are fair if they measure students' learning appropriately. To ensure assessments are fair, teachers should focus on these 4 key points. Validity. Assessments should measure what they intend to measure. Students should be assessed on what they have been taught at the same level at which they were taught. Freedom from bias. Test questions shouldn't offend or penalize students due to their background or culture. Considering students' diversity is essential when considering potential bias in an assessment. Teachers cannot assume students have the background knowledge needed to fully understand questions they may encounter. For example, students may not be fully prepared to answer a question about an airport if they've never been to one before. This ties back into assessments being valid and clear. Assessments also need to be reliable. They should produce consistent results, meaning that students should get the same score when they're given the same test in similar conditions. The last point is clarity of language. The language used should be at an appropriate vocabulary level for students, and slang terms should be avoided. Students shouldn't get the question wrong because they can't figure out what is being asked. You'll also need to be familiar with different types of assessments. Let's take a look at how 2 of those types are explained in our study guide.
Criterion-referenced assessments compare student performance to a predetermined standard, which is a criteria. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentage. Tests administered at the end of an instructional unit and state achievement tests are common examples. Norm-referenced assessments compare students to each other and rank them according to performance. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentile, grade level equivalency, or STAY-9, using a normal bell-shaped curve. Common examples include the Scholastic Aptitude Test, or SAT, and Intelligence Quotient, IQ tests. To sum this up, criterion-referenced assessment looks at how students perform against a set criteria. Norm-referenced assessment looks at how students perform against the normal curve.
All right, you made it to the last competency. Let's finish off this review session. Competency 7 is child guidance and behavior management. Here, you'll need to know appropriate strategies for problem solving, responding to challenging behaviors, and teaching character development. Let's get right into it and talk about those challenging behaviors. You're bound to have a student that requires additional behavior intervention. It's critical to think about the functions of behavior, meaning what's behind the behavior, or what's maintaining it. If you can understand the function, you can identify an intervention. The first function of challenging behavior is attention. If students are seeking your attention, no matter if it's positive or negative attention, their interventions to use are ignoring minor behaviors and encouraging appropriate requests for attention, like praising a student when they do raise their hand. If the function of the student's behavior is to escape, meaning they want to avoid something, try giving them breaks or encouraging them to do activities they do like along the way. I mean, we can all use a little break. Am I right? Now, some behavior might be driven by something tangible, meaning the child wants a certain item or activity. In that case, teachers need to be clear about when the child can get it. Explain that they'll get access to it after completing a certain activity, or make it even clearer by writing it or drawing it using a first-then chart. Finally, the behavior might be automatic or self-stimulating. You can teach the child self-monitoring skills, give them reminders, and provide reinforcement or encouragement when they're doing the right thing. Of course, these are not the only strategies you can use. They're just some of the most common and best practices. They're good to have in your toolbox for questions on the exam and in real life in your classroom. If you're a little unsure about any of this, use the 240 study guide. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of worry. And remember, our guides come with a money-back guarantee. Now that we've gone over a big concept in each competency, let's look at some practice questions to show you how those concepts will appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free practice test below. At the end, you'll get a score report to show you how well you did. After that, you can subscribe to the 240 study guide and get all the practice questions you need to guarantee that you'll pass the test. Remember, in the first competency, I told you about learning theories. Let's look at how those will show up in a question. A view held by blank is that children do not learn language through stimulus-response connection, such as how the eye blinks when a puff of air hits it. Instead, this viewpoint would place importance on allowing for processing of language before producing it. Behaviorist scientists, cognitive scientists, linguists, none of the above. This is correct. Cognitive scientists who study the process of language learning do not view learners as instant responders. Their view values processing language before language production. Let's look at one from Competency 2, Profession and Foundations. Here's one about a learning approach. This educator compared children to seeds in a garden with teachers as their cultivators and developed the concept of kindergarten based on the philosophy that children learn through play and self-expression. Friedrich Froebel, Jean Piaget, Margaret Bancroft, Charlotte Mason. The answer is Friedrich Froebel. The question feedback feature in the 240 study guide tells me that he was a German educator credited with inventing kindergarten. He believed that children learn best through play and that their self-expression should be encouraged. Remember in Competency 3, when I said I have a stages of play question with your name on it? It was game on. A 2-year-old child plays alone with a set of cards while another child stands a few feet away watching how he plays, but they do not interact with each other. The child playing with the cards is demonstrating which stage of play? Onlooker, associative, parallel, or solitary? It was asking about the child playing alone with the cards, so solitary is the right answer. Next up, a question from Category 4, Developmentally Appropriate Curricula. A first grade teacher assigns a 3-sentence writing assignment to students. As students begin working, the teacher notices a student asking another student how to spell the word fish. The teacher asks the student if she can sound the word out, and the student says, fish, but she can't think of the letters to write. Which of the following strategies can the teacher implement to help the student encode letters and write them down? Give the student letter sound picture cards in which each letter of the alphabet is in the shape of something that starts with that letter. Sing the alphabet song on a regular basis at the beginning of class and hang an alphabet chart in the room for students to reference while they write. Have the students sit with a partner and practice breaking challenging words into syllables and sound them out while reading a text together. Present several read-alouds as a targeted phonics intervention and have students work on pronouncing the words containing digraphs and blends. This is the correct answer. This student needs help with letter sound correspondence, which the alphabet picture cards will give. What about collaborative teaching questions? What do those look like? Which of the following is not a positive aspect of collaborative teaching? It provides more opportunity for detailed observation of student learning in the class. It provides more structure in a classroom than other traditional teaching approaches. It allows more opportunities for small group and one-to-one learning for each student. It exposes teachers and students to different teaching styles and innovative approaches. This is the right answer. All the variety in a co-teaching situation might make it have less structure than a classroom run by one teacher. And the other answers are definitely positive aspects of collaborating teaching. 2 people means more chances to observe students, teach small groups, and use different teaching styles. So those confirm our answer. Here comes a question from Competency 6, which was about assessment. Mr. Sandberg's students are frustrated because they all performed well on the homework assignments, but the large majority of them failed the most recent exam. In reviewing the test questions, the students noticed they were much more complex than the homework questions. The students approached Mr. Sandberg with the concern that the test has questions they were not prepared to answer. Which of the following best describes the students' concern about the assessment? The assessment is not reliable. The assessment does not have objective measures. The assessment does not have content validity. The assessment is not a performance-based assessment. This is the right answer. Remember that validity means the assessment measures what you want it to measure or what you taught. Mr. Sandberg's exam is not measuring what is being taught and reinforced by the homework questions. It is best practice to assess students at the same level they are being taught. The assessment isn't valid if its questions are at a higher level than what students have been taught and what they've been practicing for homework. Time for our last practice question. Oh good, this is a scenario-based question that lets us try our hand at determining the function of a challenging behavior. Miss Donaldson notices Jake, one of her students in her class, gets really distressed when it's time for music class. When she announces, "Okay, it's time to clean up and line up for music class," Jake acts out, knocking everything off his desk and throwing himself onto the floor in a tantrum. This is unlike Jake's usual behavior. When this happens, Miss Donaldson asks the class assistant to lead the students to music class while she calms Jake down. Miss Donaldson and Jake arrive late to music class together. It sounds like Jake is trying to avoid going to music class. Yep, the answer is escape. Now that's just a small sampling of practice questions to give you an idea about how these concepts are assessed on the test. Congratulations on finishing the video. If you found it helpful, give it a like. Join the thousands of teachers who've used 240 to pass their certification exams by clicking the link in the description below and subscribing to our study guides.